Hey guys, Taki here. Today I wanted to show off this build that I've been working on for a few days, and it's a Falling Crystals Autobomber. So Falling Crystals is a skill that's being used by my Graft, which is one of the new mechanics for this league, and on its own it doesn't really clear very well, but when you combine it with the Gravebind gloves you can enable explosions, and that gives the build some serious clearing potential. And that's why I decided to go Occultist for this build, for those big chaos explosions. And Occultist is also nice because it offers one of the few ways to provide some extra damage scaling for Falling Crystals. Since it's not considered a part of you, and it's not a minion either, lowering cold resist on the enemies with like curses, exposure, and the Void Beacon Ascendancy from Occultist, and then increasing damage taken is pretty much the only ways to scale its damage that I can think of. Of course, besides the actual rolls on the graft, which are very important. You get the Breachlord Bloodline Ascendancy, and that gives you 100% increased damage taken by graft skills on nearby enemies. So I think maximizing lowering resistance is the most important damage scaling vector to build around. I do also Shock and Bone Chill with Skitterbots. And one way to scale some damage that I haven't really worked into the build is crit scaling. I think you could use Profane Ground and maybe Assassin's Mark or something. It does have pretty high base crit on its own, and it's something that maybe you could work into the build in the future. To improve the clear, I'm using Legacy of Fury and Herald of Ash on top of the Chaos Explosions, and I'm also trying some Ignite scaling by using Foulborn Dyadian Dawn to make my Chaos Explosions ignite and proliferate. But my damage scaling is pretty bad. I'm using Spiritual Aid to scale some generic damage for both my fire and chaos explosions. You can play this as like a complete Autobomber where you just don't press any buttons and literally just walk around. You don't even have to press movement skills if you don't want. But of course, movement skills make a lot of sense to just move around a little faster. And I've also added Kinetic Bolt or Blast, Kinetic Blast to the build to apply cold exposure in a nice way. I have cold exposure on hit, and yeah, that just gives a good bonus to lowering resistance. So I did add in one button to press for single target, but otherwise this is just completely Autobomber if you want to play it like that. But yeah, I think this build is pretty far from optimized. There's probably some things I've missed, probably some ways I've built it wrong. But I still wanted to show off this concept and what the build looks like so far. So if you have any good ideas to share, if you've been playing something similar maybe, I'd love to hear it. But yeah, I'm just gonna go over the character. So I'm level 95, and yeah, my gear is a little bit cobbled together. I'm still just making a lot of changes as I go with this build, trying to figure out the best direction to build it. And right now I probably need better defense scaling in order to move on to tier 17s, but for tier 16s this works pretty well. I'm using this wand right here to get some higher levels on my Frostbite curse and to get the better exposure. Like right now the best way I can think of getting exposure is by using KB and attacking every now and then. You get inflict cold exposure on hit and fire exposure from the Eye of Malice. So on a single target, if you want to, you can attack. You still kill the map boss in tier 16s in just a couple seconds, even without it. So yeah, you don't need to add this into your build if you don't want to press any buttons. But yeah, if you KB is a way to apply cold exposure, and that's a good amount of extra lower resists. And yeah, I'm using Eye of Malice because the nearby enemies have increased fire and cold resist, actually works in the negatives, so if their resistance is negative, then it will be even more negative with that mod. Then I'm using a Serious Reflection. Being unaffected by curses is nice, but mostly just for the curse effect and some really good defensive stats. I have Impressence with Elemental Weakness and Vulnerability. The reason I picked Vulnerability is because of this graft, my other graft. So I have the Falling Crystals graft, and then I have Return to Dust. And this is a single target ability, basically. It targets rare and unique enemies. It has a 10-second cooldown, but I have reduced cooldown recovery rate. And yeah, it does really good single target damage. It's a big part of the single target. So getting some fizz damage scaling with the vulnerability is good. I felt. I think that's worth it. I guess you could use flammability instead but that would be to improve the clear, and I think the clear is already very good. So yeah, that's the impressions to get two free aura curses like with blasphemy. Anointing graceful assault to get onslaught, and because I'm using these unique boots, for example, so I can't get it on the boots. I guess you could get it on a timeless jewel as well, maybe. But yeah. So yeah, Legacy of Fury to get more explosions. It's not exactly explosions, but it's similar. For the clear, Diadian Dawn to enable ignite from my chaos explosions, and then of course Gravebind, which is build enabling to even get the access to explosions at all. With nearby enemies killed by anyone count as being killed by you instead. So that's how that works. The flasks are looking like this. Using a gold flask just to get some rarity, and yeah, jade, granite, and quicksilver, and a life flask. My rings are just life, resist, and attributes. And yeah, that's basically it for the gear, I think. For the rolls on the falling crystals, you want increased level and increased damage. Basically, that's all that matters. It's the suffixes that actually affect the skill, and the prefixes affect it gives you a stat, they increase dexterity or graft blood gain. But yeah, the suffixes is what really matters. You can get a higher roll than this one. I think it goes up to like 200% increased damage, so a little bit of a difference. Yeah, and kind of same with the return to dust. You want the increased damage and then the cooldown reduction with more damage. So that's the grafts, and yeah, let's look at the tree a little bit. My tree is looking like this. This is my Ascendancy. I have, of course, the Breach Bloodline to get 100% increased damage taken from graft skills to nearby enemies, and then less fizz and cold damage taken because I have one Uulgraft and one Tulgraft. And then I have Void Beacon to lower resist, and Profane Bloom for explosions, and this will make it so my curses can go on hexproof enemies and one extra curse. And yeah, this is a pretty important part, is having shielding presence on a medium cluster jewel, because falling crystals will target frozen or shield enemies. Now, most things will be shielded by your skitterbots, but it's nice to have this when your skitterbots are lagging behind and you're shield charging into a pack. This will make sure it automatically targets them and starts shooting falling crystals. So you want a large cluster with minion damage, because we're using spiritual aid to scale generic damage. And then yeah, you really want a shielding presence on a medium cluster. And I also have Fan the Flames on another medium cluster to get Ignite proliferation. Again, the Ignites aren't doing much damage right now, but it does help a little bit. And on the tree, I do have some Ignite chance. This is 20% chance, and then it's 15 for these small nodes. Some damage over time multiplier here. I'm really not sure if it's super worth it. Like I said, still very much subject to change, still very kind of improvised. Just trying to make it work. And yeah, this is another 5% here if you shield them. I don't know if it counts when I hit them with Kinetic Blast. It does have a little bit of cold damage, so it should shield, but I guess maybe the skitterbots override it. I wasn't using skitterbots just yesterday. So maybe I should remove this, because then I was using Creeping Frost and just attacking more myself. But I wanted to make sure it really feels like an Autobomber, so I decided to remove that. And now I just press this on single target every now and then. So yeah, maybe, but they are ignited by me and I do have fire damage, right? So that is still worth it. as long as I ignite a little bit with my kinetic blast, I should get that 5% on bosses as well. So, but yeah, as you can tell, I'm still kind of figuring things out myself. Important things on the tree, getting some area here is nice. This mastery is really good for sustaining energy shield. 5% over 1 second when you take fist damage from an enemy hit. So when you're being swarmed and attacked, that's really nice. Some defensive notes here. Like I said, scaling generic damage here is pretty important. I'm not sure if Wicked Ward is worth it. It feels okay. Ghost Dance again to sustain some energy shield, because we are hybrid, and have this so chaos damage doesn't go all the way through my energy shield. This 10% less damage taken from damage over time is kind of worth it, even though I don't get much from these nodes. Here's 10% more damage taken if they've been shielded by you. Again, I'm not sure how even that works. Now that I've switched some things up and I'm not using Creeping Frost anymore. But that's the tree for now. That's what it's looking like. For the gems, Skitterbots with Unbound Ailments and Bone Chill. Tempest Shield is something that I just would use for single target or like bossing instead of Herald of Ash. So like I can actually do decently well versus bosses, and yeah, but Herald of Ash doesn't do anything for bosses, so I just switch for Tempest Shield in that case. And yeah, so Tempest Shield is not something you're running all the time, but on bosses. I have GMP and Life Tap on my Kinetic Blast again, and KB is just to get exposure. I have a cast and damage taken Immortal Call set up here with Life Tap. We have very little mana, kinda, so you need to Life Tap stuff. Shield Charge with Life Tap, faster attacks, and Cull. I mean the Cull is kind of whatever, but yeah. And then I have Vulnerability, Arrogance here. I just realized pretty recently when I have free auras from Impressence, it's just free to use, and the aura effect here does work on Blasphemy as far as I understand. It does work on curses, even though it's aura effect. Then I have increased AoE and yeah, Blasphemy, and of course it's elemental weakness with vulnerability. And then I have just lastly a Frost Blink here. But that's kind of all I had to say about the build for now. Again, if you have some suggestions for things to add into the build, or if maybe you're playing a similar build yourself, I'd love to hear about it. Or if you have any questions, if I didn't explain something, yeah, just go ahead and ask, and yeah, I'll see you in the next video.